Ever wonder what it was like to be a farmer 500 years ago? Forget your alarm clock. The rooster was your only wake-up call. We're talking about the 1500s, a time when life was deeply connected to the land and the seasons. Today, we're going to step back in time and live a day in the life of a typical European peasant farmer. So grab a cup of whatever you like, and let's get started. Our day begins before the sun even peaks over the horizon. The first sound you'd hear isn't your phone buzzing, but the crow of a rooster. It's pitch black, cold, and your bed is probably just a straw-stuffed mattress on the floor of a one-room cottage that you share with your entire family, and maybe a few animals if it's really cold outside. The first task of the day, getting the fire going. This was crucial, not just for warmth, but for cooking the day's first meal. There are no light switches, so the flickering flames of the hearth provide the only light. Breakfast is simple, but hearty. Think of a thick porridge made from oats or rye, called pottage. Sometimes, you might have a piece of dark, dense bread made from rye or barley, not the fluffy white bread we know today. Wheat bread was a luxury for the rich. You'd wash it down with some small ale, which was safer to drink than water. Yes, even for the kids. The brewing process killed off most of the dangerous bacteria. With a little food in your belly, it's time to head out to the fields. As the sun finally starts to rise, the whole family gets to work. Farming was a communal effort. Men, women, and children all had their roles. There were no tractors, no combines, just your own two hands and some basic tools. The most important tool was the heavy plow, usually pulled by a team of oxen. Walking behind those oxen all day, guiding the plow through the heavy soil, was backbreaking work. The fields weren't one big plot like we see today. Most villages used an open field system. The land was divided into large fields, and each family was allocated several strips in each field. This seemed fair, ensuring everyone got a mix of good and not so good land. But it also meant a lot of wasted time walking between your scattered strips. The work you did depended entirely on the season. In spring, it was all about plowing and sowing. You'd carefully scatter seeds by hand, praying for the right amount of rain. Summer was the time for weeding, which was a constant battle against nature. You'd also be tending to your garden patch near the cottage, where you'd grow vegetables like cabbages, onions, and peas. These veggies were essential additions to the daily pottage. Then came the most critical time of year, the harvest in late summer and early autumn. The entire village would mobilize. Everyone, from the youngest child to the oldest grandparent, was in the fields from sunrise to sunset. You'd cut the grain with a sharp, curved sickle or a long scythe. It was a race against time and weather. A sudden rainstorm could ruin the entire crop, spelling disaster for the coming winter. The stalks of grain were bundled into sheaves and left in the field to dry, before being taken to the barn. But the work didn't stop once the crops were cut. Then came threshing. You beat the dried stalks with a flail, a tool that looks like a giant nunchuck, to separate the valuable grain from the chaff and straw. It was dusty, repetitive work, often done inside the barn. The grain was then taken to the village mill to be ground into flour. But here's the catch. The mill was owned by the lord of the manor, and for the privilege of using it, you had to give him a portion of your flour. This was just one of many taxes and dues owed to the lord. A good chunk of your harvest, your labor, and your life was not your own. What about the women and children? They were just as busy. While men did the heavy plowing, women were responsible for a huge range of tasks. They would look after the livestock, a cow for milk, a few chickens for eggs, maybe a pig to be fattened for slaughter. They milked the cow, churned butter, and made cheese. They tended the vegetable garden, foraged for nuts and berries in the woods, and did all the cooking, cleaning, and mending. A very important job was spinning wool or flax into thread, which could then be woven into cloth to make the family's clothes. This was something they did constantly, even while walking or watching the children. Children started working as soon as they could walk. Little ones would be tasked with scaring birds away from the newly sown fields, or collecting firewood. As they got older, they'd help with weeding, looking after the younger siblings, or tending to the animals. There was no school for peasant children. Their education was learning the skills they needed to survive and continue the farming life. Around midday, you'd take a break for a small meal, usually eaten right there in the fields. It would be more of that dark bread, maybe some cheese, an onion, and more ale. Then it was straight back to work until dusk. There were no weekends, no holidays in our modern sense. Your days off were holy days, dictated by the church calendar. These were important breaks for feasting and celebration, but they were few and far between. As the sun began to set, you'd finally head home, leading the animals back from the pasture. The evening chores still needed doing, milking the cow again, feeding the animals, and bringing in water from the village well. The evening meal was often the main meal of the day. It would be another pottage, but perhaps with a few more vegetables thrown in. Or if you were lucky, a small piece of bacon from the family pig for flavor. Meat was a rarity. Unless it was a feast day, your diet was mostly grains and vegetables. After dinner, there wasn't much to do. With no electricity, the cottage was lit only by the faint glow of the fire or a single, expensive tallow candle. This was a time for storytelling, for mending tools, or for finishing up some spinning. But mostly, people went to bed soon after the sun went down. You needed to save your energy, because tomorrow, the rooster would crow again, and the entire cycle would start all over. Life was incredibly hard. It was a constant struggle against weather, disease, and hunger. A bad harvest could mean starvation. An injury could be a death sentence, and you were tied to the land and to your lord, with very little freedom or opportunity to change your station in life. But it wasn't all misery. There was a strong sense of community. Villagers relied on each other to survive. They worked together, celebrated together, and mourned together. There was a deep connection to the rhythms of nature, a satisfaction in seeing the seeds you planted grow into food that would sustain your family through the winter. And there were simple joys, the warmth of the fire on a cold night, the taste of fresh bread, a village festival with music and dancing. It was a life of hardship, yes, but also one of resilience, community, and a profound connection to the earth. So the next time you're at the grocery store, picking up a loaf of bread or a bag of vegetables, take a moment to think about the incredible journey of human history that brought that food to your table. The life of a farmer 500 years ago was unimaginably different from our own, and it gives us a real appreciation for the world we live in today. Thanks for joining me on this trip back in time. If you found this journey interesting, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical lifestyles you'd like to explore. See you in the next video.